Hey, welcome everyone to the From the Shadows podcast. I am your host, Shane Grove. And before we get started with this homegrown episode, I am going to remind you that if you can't get enough of the From the Shadows podcast, and who really can, go to our website, fromtheshadowspodcast.com. There's links to all of our social media, to our Patreon page, to our store, but there's a contact button there that you can get a hold of me if you have a story or something that you want to share with me, especially if you want to come on and do an episode with us. And if you want to get a hold of me personally, the easiest way to do that is go to my Instagram, Shane Grove Author, send me a message, or like today's guest, go to our Facebook pages, the From the Shadows podcast page, hit our messenger button and send us a message. And I promise I will respond unless you're trying to get some banking information out of me. Because then if you're doing that, you're just wasting your time. There's nothing there. So with that being said, I want to introduce a fellow Buckeye and a fellow songwriter, Kevin. Thank you for reaching out to me on Facebook and coming on the show to share some of your paranormal experiences.
You're very welcome, and thanks for having me. I'm kind of bummed now because I thought I'd get your banking information.
Well, like I said, it's just a fool's errand because there's just really nothing.
There's nothing there.
It's,
Yeah.
it's not worth the effort. Trust me.
Right.
Trust me. So Kevin, so you sent me a pretty heartfelt message about something that happened when you were, when we were all younger in Ohio. Um, so I want you just kind of get into that, set the stage, like where you were in Ohio, what age, and tell me what happened to you.
Well, originally I grew up outside of Dayton in a suburb called West Carrollton. And my dad worked for Dayton Power and Light at the time at Tate Station, which was anybody that had driven through downtown Dayton at the time could see the stacks and stuff because it was right there off of I-75. At the same time, Dayton Power and Light was building two power plants on the Ohio River along Adams and Brown County. And I was a city boy, but suddenly in junior high, we moved to Adams County because he was offered a manager position. So, I mean, my childhood there was amazing. I mean, we rode. I had an enduro dirt bike, and all the hottest girls in school were in the neighborhood. Now, this neighborhood, I want to let people know that it was it was outside of West Union, Ohio. Okay.
Okay.
But it wasn't in West Union. It was down in farmland. And then there was this group of 2 blocks of probably, I don't know, 20, 25 houses on these 2 blocks in pretty much the middle of nowhere. And surrounding us was heavy woods and farmland. Eventually they built the vocational school there. So, I guess the first thing that I need to say is I had read John Green's Apes Among Us when I was a kid. I'd been hit by a car and really shattered both legs. I didn't think I'd walk again, so I was in a body cast from the chest down, and I didn't have much to do at that time. And I was probably 10, so I was reading a lot, and I got a book that was called Apes Among Us by John Green. So I'd read that, and I found it interesting. But I never thought remotely that something like this would happen. So I've always been a musician in bands. So I just graduated high school and I was still living with my parents. I mean, a couple of months before I had graduated. So I was still living with my parents, and they lived in kind of a wooded part of this neighborhood. Across the street was heavy woods. Behind us was heavy woods, into farmland, into heavy woods. To the east, to the west, it was all, hardwoods like Ohio is. So I left band practice and I got home at right around midnight, and I pulled into my parents' driveway, which was concrete. And I put the car in park, and I was I was listening to a song. It was probably Def Leppard or something at the time that I had to learn the lyrics to. So I had an old stereo in the car, an old cassette player. They were called a Craco, kind of a Kmart type of off brand. And every time I'd push eject on that thing, it would spit the tape out on the floor. So I did that because I was going to go in the house and listen to it on headphones in my room before I went to bed and write down lyrics. Back then, you had to reverse, write lyrics down, reverse, write more lyrics down.
You didn't get to look them up on the internet? What are you talking
No, there was no such thing. God,
about?
that would have been too easy. So I pull into my parents' driveway, and it was a really, really dark night, and the only light illuminating at the whole house, which was almost a 3,500 square foot house, was the little doorbell, the little orange doorbell.
Okay.
And I was used to that. You get out of I knew I had to stay back far enough on the driveway to where my parents could get out of the garage the next day and back around me. So I pull in, I eject this cassette tape, and of course it spits it on the floor. So I turn, my car is off, it's in park. So I turn on the interior light to reach down and get this. I'm on almost the exact same moment I turn on that interior light from the woods directly across from my parents' driveway. Um, I heard something walking out of the woods. Now it was a gravel road and then the concrete driveway. And the gravel road was probably 10, 11, 12 feet, like a standard, back road where you could get across each other, around each other. And I heard distinctly two footsteps on this gravel. And then I heard it on the driveway, and I'm looking in my rear view, but of course I've got this interior light on and I can't see much. All I can see is this big shadow, but I could hear it. And being a vocalist my whole life, I know breathing and I know, you know, timbres of voice and pitches, and this thing was breathing like some kind of bellow. I mean, it was like, but it was way deeper than I could imagine. And occasionally a little gurr, almost like a mad large dog. Okay, but way deeper. And it kept pacing back and forth around the back of my car. My car was a 1975 Nova, which is not a light car. It wasn't something huge, but this thing kept walking around and around. And I could feel it looking at me, and I was scared to freaking death. And finally it lets loose this really deep rumble, almost like a lion at the zoo. If you're walking around the zoo and you hear a lion roar, it was like that. It shook everything in me. It shook everything. And then it must have struck the back of the car. Well, I know it did. It struck the back of the car, and it pushed this 1975 Nova 5 3/4 inches. We measured the skid marks the next morning on my parents' driveway. At the same time, my mom was sleeping on the second floor, and she had a balcony off the room that faced where I was parked. So she came out on the balcony, and excuse my French, but she said, "Kevin, what the are you doing out there?" And then she got silent, and this thing and it crossed the road in one step. So it crossed the road in two steps the first time. This time it crossed the road in one step. And through the woods, I mean, it sounded like a freaking bulldozer going through those woods. So at the same time, I didn't know, but my mom had, as dark as it was, had seen the silhouette of this thing a lot better than I could through my rear view. She ran downstairs. She turned on all the outside lights, and she came to the front door, and she said, "Kevin, Michael, get in here, get in here." And for the life of me, I could not get out of that car, man. I could still hear this thing behind me crashing through the woods. and I just couldn't. So then she made her way around to a breezeway that was between the garage and the house, and she turned on those lights and stood in the breezeway and kept saying, Kevin, Kevin, get in here. Kevin, get in here. I couldn't make myself get out of that car. I don't know how many minutes passed. I really don't. I just know that I was shaken to the core. And I finally got the nerve up and I opened the door to the car and bolted up to the breezeway, which must have been about, I'm going to say 70 feet from me, and went into the breezeway. And when I saw Mom, she said, "What the hell was that? What was that?" And I said, "I don't know." And we went into the house, and we both, I'll never forget this. We had a big the breezeway entered into the kitchen. We had a large kitchen table. I came from a large family, and we both just paced around this table and just trying to digest it. We didn't have a lot of words for each other. And finally, Mom said, "I don't know what it was, but it looked like a giant behind your car." And I need to tell you this too. When we got into the house, when I finally got out of the car and got into the house, and this thing was still running through all these woods, and we heard this god awful scream, and they say it starts out as a low rumble and it gets higher and higher. This started out high and stayed high, and it was like Rob Halford from Judas Priest on steroids. This voice was ungodly high and just creepy. Scared the heck out of Mom and I. The same summer, I never told anybody about this, and Mom, of course, would not say anything about it. She was very religious. And the same summer, though, there was a farm back behind the house. It was a hog farm, and the farmer kept complaining about a couple of his big hogs had been stolen. And we're talking big hogs. And one of them was found in one of his fields, and it was like 3/4 of the way eaten. And nobody could figure out what the heck it was. There was what we called the block walkers. There were some of the mothers that would walk around the blocks at night and
Mhm.
and talk and stuff. Well, there was one of my best friends' mom had a Labrador named Nikki, and they were walking, and it was dark. There was no worry, and they were walking around the block, and Nikki got her hackles up and ran into the woods and literally flew through the air out of the woods and
Holy,
ran straight to the house, hid behind a lawnmower for a week. Wouldn't come out of that garage. Scared to death. This all happened within like a month, 6 weeks of each other. And I started thinking serious about it. When you're a young guy and you're around all these pretty girls and you're riding around on your motorbike, you want to go off into the woods and have a little smoochy smooch and
Mhm.
a little experimenting. So across the street where this thing came out of from my parents' home in this patch of woods, there was this nice, convenient place we could go that it was like woven, and it had moss in the bottom of it. You couldn't fully stand in it, but you could fit 5 or 6 kids in it. That's how big around it was. And that's where we would go in and do our teenage stuff. And thinking back at it now, I'm thinking, well, criminy, that could have been a nest. That could have been a nest because this whole neighborhood was new. You
That's what,
know,
that's what I was going to ask. Like, how old were the houses there?
no,
Like,
they were new. They were new. My parents' house was built 3 years, 4 years before this incident. And it was one of the first houses built there. There was a couple, that were out there, but not what it ended up being. So this was definitely intrusion onto a habitat.
as you were describing, I'm thinking, like, what would make this thing do that to you? But you know how it is. At some point, you reach your breaking point, and maybe you got home. You said you got home late, and maybe this thing was just like, I can't get any peace and quiet. I'm trying. Maybe it was trying to hunt, and there you are with this light on and stuff, and it's just like, stop. Like,
I've thought about that. I really don't know why it it
just,
chose that time and that
mhm.
occasion to do what it did. I just know that it happened. This is Yogi. Come on, Yogi. You're not a Sasquatch. Go on. So anyway, I the only thing I could think of was maybe because I was in its nest occasionally, or the noise of the car. I didn't have pipes or anything on this car. It was just a standard four-door Nova. I really don't know, Shane, why it picked that moment and why it got so angry. Maybe it was the music. I really don't know. But the same
Yeah,
summer
that
also, I also want to tell you that,
yeah,
my brother and I shared a bedroom with my younger brother. He's a couple years younger than me. And that bedroom window was on the second floor, so it was about 10 foot up. And previous to what happened to me, I had come home and he said there was a horse staring at me in the window. I said, "What do you mean it was a horse?" He said, "Well, it had to be. It had great big eyes and they were red." And see, all this stuff just started clicking with me over the years. I'm thinking, what?
that's no
How
horse.
could I,
That's no horse. That's no
yeah,
horse.
that's no horse. And to be so naive, but I mean, come on, this is way before Bigfoot was a big phenomenon. Of course, Patty was out
Hmm.
and we'd all seen that, but come on, in Southern Ohio, I mean, this is crazy. This is just crazy. So I eventually moved from there and came out west, and I lived in Wyoming for 16 years. No Bigfoot or anything like that. That's the only encounter I had, but my interest was still there for it. At one point, I tried moving back to Adams County. I bought a small piece of property, a little over 5 acres, had a barn, and it was mostly hardwoods and stuff. And I thought, I'm going to start looking into this a little bit more and see if I'm crazy or if anybody else has had these experiences. And I didn't put it out. I didn't speak about it to people or anything. But one night, my neighbor came home from work, and he'd come home from work, and we'd get into what it was called his shed. He had this old homemade building up in the woods, and we'd drink homemade wine up there and listen to rock and roll way too loud. And he said, "You're not going to believe this." When I went to work at 5 o'clock this morning, I was pulling out, and in the trees, there was a great big pond across from both of us, surrounded by trees. He said, "In the trees, I swear I saw two monkeys up in those trees." He said they were swinging, and then when my headlights hit them, they froze and they looked at me with red eyes. So I added that to the database. So I had a really serious health problem a few years later, and it almost killed me. Actually, it did kill me, and I made it through. But I got myself what's called a Yamaha T Max, which is it's called a maxi scooter. It weighed like 247 pounds and it had 600 cc's. So it was like this plastic rocket ship on two wheels. And I thought, well, I'm going to start going up to the Shawnee Forest and poking around and just trying to kill time as my body's recuperating. But there was a gas station in Blue Creek, and occasionally I'd stop in there and get a soda or whatever. And they had this old bench outside, and the old timers would sit on this bench. So when I went up to Shawnee this one trip, the bench was full, and when I came back, there was only one old guy there. So I stopped in, and I think I went in and bought a soda and a pack of smokes, and I came out and I sat down next to him, And he introduced himself. He said his name was Jacob. And he was typical. I mean, bibs, big white beard. So I just asked him, I said, have you ever seen or heard anything weird around here, in the woods or of any of your neighbors? And he opened up to me and he gave me another guy's name. His name was Bill, and he told me where he lived, and it was way up in a holler. So I went. He called Bill, and I went up a week later, and I spoke with this guy, kind of a amateur investigator type of thing, just because I
Yeah.
was trying to
Yeah.
heal up, couldn't work, and this guy was beside himself. I mean, you could see the emotion on this man's face when he talked about what happened to him when he was hunting in the woods. And he said, how am I supposed to put food on the table when I can't go in the woods anymore? Here's this big generational farmer from the hills crying. So you knew something was going on.
Hmm. Hmm.
So then I ran into a park ranger at Shawnee, two of them actually, and I asked them, has anybody said anything about Bigfoot or anything, just jokingly and stuff, and they both said no, but one of them was a female, and the woman came back to me after the guy got in the truck, and she said you need to go, and I cannot for life, I don't know if it was Burro, Donkey, or Jackass Road. It was one of the old fire roads. They go up through the forest.
Yeah. 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 I know.
And she said there was somebody that reported something last week. So here I am on my little T-Max and I ride up this gravel road. And I get up here and there's a trail, and there's a pull off and there's a trail. So I pulled off and I pull the bike up and I start walking down this trail and I get probably 150 yards in and I hear this. And then from the other side I hear these tree knocks. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. This is lumberjacks or whatever. So, but I did turn my little butt around and went back up to the bike and got on it and got out of there. Now, was it Sasquatch or a Bigfoot? I don't know. I don't know, but it was enough to scare this city boy in the country. And then I heard about a case of a sighting at Fort Hill, which is way past Peebles and Locust Grove on Highway 41. And it's a state memorial. Now, this one kind of bothered me because I went way up. There's a hiking trail that goes around it. And I went probably a third of the way around it. And I could hear something walking next to me. And I thought it was somebody messing with me. But again, I started thinking, oh God, now what? So I turned around and I swear something paced me out of the woods. And it scared me so bad that when I got back to the parking lot, I I was the only one in the parking lot at that point. Everybody else had left. I couldn't make myself get on that bike and get out of there. I was so, I don't know, petrified, just afraid of anything. I actually had to go to the doctor and he gave me something for panic attacks. It was short lived, but I think that's what caused the panic attack. Just the thought of that. Now, again, it wasn't a sighting. I didn't see anything, and it could have been moonshiners. It could have been kids messing with me or whatever. So that's pretty much my Bigfoot encounters, in my experience. I heard a lot of stories, but we all do.
Well, I wanted to ask you, so your mom, okay, first off, what was it that got her attention to make her go out into the balcony in the first place? Like, what was
She heard the sound when it struck the back of my car.
okay,
She heard that. I mean, the whole neighborhood probably heard it. I mean,
okay,
it was like a car crash. The back of my car had two small dents in it, like the size of a great big thumb, and that's all it had. I mean,
mhm,
it's not like there was handprints and it crunched the back of the car or anything like that. It was just a couple of small dents as if two thumbs and impress themselves. So she heard this. And of course, it woke her up. And I'm sure, as a mom would, she was waiting on her son to get home from band practice and yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what made her come out on the balcony and say, Kevin Michael, what the H are you doing out there?
Now, did
That's
she?
when she says she saw something behind my car. Again, all I could see was this dark shape, and it was massive. But she said she saw this thing behind. She said it looked like a giant. She didn't complain any. She didn't say anything about any fur, or she couldn't make any details like that. She just said it looked like a giant man behind your car.
Well, and you're in the car. That had to be probably your first thought too. Is like, who's this dude doing this? I mean, you didn't go. Did you go right away to like this must be a Bigfoot
No,
or
no, but I thought maybe a bear, but
wow?
when you start rationalizing it, it's like there is black bears in Ohio, but none of them are big and strong enough to push a freaking car that
No,
heavy for 5 3/4 inches on a concrete driveway. There's just no way.
no, absolutely not. Not push to park car like that. I wouldn't think. But so did she ever come to like? Did you ever go, hey mom, I think we saw Bigfoot that night?
It was when she told me that she said she saw a giant man behind my car that the light clicked on simply because of the John Green book, Apes Among Us. I thought, well, that sounds an awful lot like Bigfoot. And the next day, I asked mom about it again and she wouldn't talk about it. And through the years, as I'd fly in and out to visit, occasionally I'd bring it up and she'd say, Kevin Michael, I do not want to talk about it. So fast forward to about 3 years ago, and I get a phone call, and the family has called and asked me if I'll come to Ohio. So I came to Ohio, and I went into mom's house, the same house, and she told me she was dying of cancer. She had 7 kinds of cancer, and there was 5 of us children, and she said, "I'd like you to be the one to take care of me." So I was in the middle of making and writing and recording an album. I had all these musicians, but I dropped everything and went back to take care of mom. So about a month before she passed, I brought the subject up again. And she said basically the same thing. There was a giant man behind your car, and he was stepping from foot to foot back and forth. So I yelled, and all I saw was it just bolt across the road. And again, it only took one step on that freaking gravel road on the way out.
Mhm.
So its strides must have been massive. I guess I was naive and kind of dumb for a long time, Shane, because it took a long time for me to take all these little pieces of the puzzle, the little the nest in the woods, and the missing hogs, and the horse in the window my brother saw, and the dog coming flying out of the woods through the air. I mean, all this stuff just kind of added up, and
Well,
I've kept it this all these years.
and I just said this, I just got interviewed today for something, and that I said, growing up in Ohio in the 70s, you saw the Patterson Gimlin film, you read the books, but you thought this was a Pacific Northwest
Sure,
thing.
you never thought there was anything like that in Ohio.
Yeah. So the first thing you're never going to jump to in that time frame
No,
when we were growing up is, oh, that had to be a Bigfoot because
absolutely not.
it wouldn't even have made sense. Which the crazy thing is though, is now that I've talked to people and learned stories, there's your story. You're having a Bigfoot experience. And you're just one of hundreds, if not thousands of people who during that same time period when we all thought it was only happening in the Pacific Northwest, it was happening here. And it's just there was no way for people to tell their story and connect with other people.
I
Yeah.
agree, or more or less even want to come out about it. Look, it's been
Oh
over
yeah.
40 years for me.
Mm.
And other than people that are very close to me, I've not really talked about this story a whole lot. I mean, heck, there's a lot of material there to write a song. I've never written a song about it. It really,
Talk about
it
bad
really
Leroy
impacts.
Brown. Talk about bad Leroy Brown. That's what
Oh, you
I'm.
bet.
That's what I'm at.
Leroy Huge.
So I wonder if it makes you think. It makes you wonder then to if you could go back, 10 years after that happened into that neighborhood and talk to the kids that live there and the people that live there and say, all right, what did you guys experience for the last 10 years here? Like, what have you guys seen that other than the dog getting tossed out or, which, that in itself is crazy. Like, who picks up a dog and tosses it back out? Like a person wouldn't even do that, you
Well,
know?
especially an 80-pound black lab.
Yeah.
That's
It just makes you wonder what else happened in those that little subdivision there, and
I don't know.
that didn't get never got talked about or reported. That's crazy. That's
I do
pretty.
know there's a lot of hardwood land out there
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of places to hide. There just is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow.
And I know it seems suspect that this happened to me and that I'd read The Apes Among Us, but it's again, there was no Bigfoot phenomenon. That was not even remotely on my mind when this happened.
No, no, I know. I don't think. Yeah, it was a different time, and especially here, and I don't think people that weren't around then maybe don't understand that just was not anything that we'd have thought of.
The thing that sticks with me the most is the breathing and the depth of the vocalizations shaking the car. I mean, like a low rumble, like a lion in a zoo, but even deeper than that. It was crazy. It was crazy. And I'll admit it, man, I was scared to death.
Well, yeah, whatever, no matter what it was, to be bold enough to come up to the back of your car and just manhandle the back of your car while you're in it. You got to know, like, I can't jump out, even if it's a dude. I can't jump out and take this guy. He
Right.
just pushed my
Right.
car 5 inches, 5 inches forward. So I can't imagine. I mean, I as much as cool as it sounds for people who want to have an experience, I can't
Listen,
imagine.
it ain't cool.
Can't imagine, and I can't imagine you know what went through your mom's um, mind seeing that out there. So no, I'm
Yeah,
I'm grateful that you wanted to come on and tell this story through our platform because that's a great story.
I
I
appreciate you. And that's why I thought, all right, if I'm gonna tell it, this is the guy I want to tell it to. He seems like a real guy.
Yeah, well, I'm really like not wanting to have the same experience you have. I'm just going to tell you.
I
Gonna
don't
tell
think
you.
anybody would want that. I
Oh
mean,
boy,
some people would say, I'd get out my gun and
nah.
you would have done the same thing as me, which is this.
Every time somebody says that, all I can think of is the scene in Blazing Saddles where Cleavon Little goes, Mongo is terrorizing the town, and Cleavon Little goes to get the gun and go talk to and Gene Wilder's like, no, 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 you don't want to do that. Like, what do you mean? You're only going to make him mad.
That's right.
You're only going to make him.
That's right. That's right.
Well, okay, so I know because we talked before the show that you also have a ghost or paranormal story you want to share. And so I
Well,
want
I
to
do, but I don't want people to think I'm full of BS. I But
Listen, it's just because, I mean, I've had multiple things happen to me that aren't the same. And I totally understand that if you're in places where this stuff happens, this is why I don't go looking for Bigfoot, and I don't go do a bunch of ghost hunting or any at all, because I trust what people tell me that it happened, and I've had enough happen to me. So, Phil, our producer, he always goes, "Oh, everybody, somebody had this and this and this and this and this and happened," and he's slowly, I think, coming around to the fact that certain people are
or
just
magnets.
they're magnets, or they're just open. They're open to, because I firmly believe that we all have, whatever you want to call it, third eye that does get blinded by external noise, whatever that is keeping us from experiencing things that, aren't your quote unquote everyday things. I think everybody has the ability to, have some perception into different things. And I think that for some reason,
Mankind has lost the ability to find their way back to it.
yeah, either it was on purpose, that people they're like, well, we'll distract them with commercial McDonald's commercials, or or whatever else, uh from reaching their full potential of enlightenment, so to speak, and so yeah, I for one am not going to think anybody's crazy just because they had to, ran into a ghost for sure. So no judgment here. This is judgment free
Yeah, I
zone.
appreciate it, because I wasn't the only person that had experiences with this particular entity. That's for sure. It had happened for decades. So my older sister ran a dance studio,
Okay.
and she had probably 75 to 100 students. And it had grown from, a dozen, the business grew. And she
Mm-hmm.
went from having the recitals at a community building, a local community building. She needed a bigger venue. So she chose the Maysville, Kentucky Opera Theater
Okay.
for her. And every year, my younger brother, the one that saw the horse in the window, and I were roped into helping, helping with curtains and things like this. But we were still teenagers and rock and rollers at that. So in this particular building, there's the ground seating, there's a mezzanine, another mezzanine, and then another really steep mezzanine. And at the top of that steep mezzanine was a like a spotlight room
Okay.
where they would run spotlights and stuff. And in that room, they had a toilet and a cord for a light bulb. And that was all they had in that room. And to get to it, they had all kinds of tables and old chairs and stuff stacked everywhere. I mean, we had to climb over everything to get up there and stash some beer up there. So we did, we stashed it. And of course, we get a call to come down and help. So we make our way down and go down and we help. And, about 45 minutes later, I guess, we're done with helping her for the time being. And we thought, let's go up and have a beer, So we climb over all this old furniture and chairs and stuff and go way up to the top of this mezzanine or I guess a balcony, I guess is what you'd say, into this little projection room. And our beer was all open, spilled, and the light bulb was in the toilet. Now, at the time, the building was locked, and the only people that were in there was my brother and I, my sister, one helper mom, and about 15 kindergarten age girls. So there was no way that anybody could have done that to this. Okay, but that's scratching the surface to what happened. Okay, in this building, there's one room. The myth is, or whatever it is, that a ballerina from France had died there of influenza in the 1800s, and that her spirit still haunted it. And there was a group of actors called the Maysville Players that swore if you went there every night at midnight, you would hear her dancing on the stage. You couldn't see her, you could just hear the footsteps on the stage. And in this one particular room, there was like this image in the wall that said, I'm alive. You know, you think, okay, that's just graffiti. But according to the owner, because my sister griped about it, I was scaring the little girls. And the owner said, we keep painting over it and it keeps coming back out. So
Really?
one night,
Ah,
everybody's out of this huge old building. This place is massive. It's got a basement and sub basements. I mean, this thing is massive. Nobody's in the building. The doors are all locked. And the only people in there is my sister and I, the dance instructor and I. And we're getting ready to leave. And she said, I've got to use the bathroom and we can go. And I said, okay. So I waited out in the common, like the concession, what would be the concession area now, while my sister was in this bathroom. Well, these bathrooms had accordion doors.
okay.
You know, they were like old accordion style doors, and they only had a little flimsy lock on them. So she started screaming. So I ran to the bathroom, and the lights are doing this. And she's saying, I can't get out. I can't get out. And I walked up to that accordion door and I just opened it right up. And she said,
Now
she
wait
said,
a sec. Now wait a sec.
I could not get out that door, that it would not open. And then the lights started.
Oh my God. So okay. So anybody that's not watching this on video, okay, the light. So you were making motion that the lights were flashing, like going on
Yes,
and
the
off.
lights were flashing.
But the best part is you made the motion of the door opening, your cat came right across the screen. And, and oh my gosh, I wonder how many people that kind of scared who are
I
watching.
don't know.
Who
Maybe
are
you'll get
watching.
10,000 watches off of this because of the cat. I don't
Oh,
know.
that was fantastic. I mean, the cat's got perfect timing. We got to
I'm,
sign.
I, I guess I've got him trained. It was Photoshop.
So whatever this so all right
The entity would not let her out of that bathroom.
so is that the only story? I mean, okay, so it seems to me that's kind of vicious for a ballerina. You know, like
I would agree.
why is a ballerina going up and destroying your beer and throwing a light bulb in the toilet? And why is she trying to scare another female? It,
Especially another dancer.
yeah, that's
My sister was a professional dancer, so
so
I
I
have no
wonder.
idea. But when I opened that accordion door, Shane, she was on the floor bawling.
Holy smokes.
She said I was pulling on that door with both hands, and the lights kept flickering, and none of the other lights in the theater were flickering, just the ones in that little entryway into this bathroom. And I was able to just open it right up.
That's crazy. I take it, you said that there's all kinds of reports then
Oh, there's
of
lights in the
activity.
windows. People report seeing lights in the windows. And this building's really old. I mean, really,
Is it still standing? Is it
it
still
is.
okay? I wonder. I'm going to have to do some research and see if people have gone and done some ghost investigations
It's
there.
not a. It's not even three-quarter of a mile from the old hospital there in Maysville that's supposed to be haunted.
Wow.
I think it's called Hay something. I don't know. I've got a good friend that I went to junior high with that, strangely enough, lives in the mountains up here near us, and now she and I are good friends. But we used to ride the bus together in junior high.
You guys couldn't wait to get out of Southern Ohio. Is that what
Oh well, anybody
you're?
that had any smarts at all back then, they knew that it was either the military, getting lucky at a power plant job, or being on welfare. You know, that's the way it was. And so, I mean, when I first left Ohio, I moved to Michigan and lived in a pup tent for 3 weeks, or no, excuse me, 3 months, and worked as a contractor at Dow Chemical in Midland.
Oh, really?
Until I had enough money saved to get, well, a guy had pity on me. And he had an old hunting camper and he let me stay in it for a few months until I had enough money saved up, to rent a place. So you did what you had to do.
I know exactly where Midland, Michigan is. My grandfather owned an old farm on Midland.
Beautiful country.
Yeah, yeah, it is. I think the to this day that because my uncle now owns it, it's still a dirt road, and it's only a
Right.
couple miles south of the main free or highway there that runs east and west through Midland.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so now your partner, you said she has a great story too, and
But her story is probably more mind blowing than mine. Mine was a door that wouldn't open and beer that was spilled.
that
You
just sounds
know,
like a bad Saturday night.
I
Um,
know, right? Same as
so
the,
it's
but she does have a great story, and I'm going to let her tell it. Okay,
yeah,
she's my partner in music and in life, and I want to introduce you to Briggs,
Briggs.
Briggs, like Briggs and Stratton.
Hi,
Briggs.
Shane.
Hey, welcome to the show. I know you've been sitting
Thank
off
you.
off to the side there, but
Yeah.
now it's your time to shine. If he doesn't let you have the spotlight musically, now you get it
Oh,
on the
no, he
pod.
gives me the spotlight. He always shoves me into it, whether I want to go or not. But uh, yeah, I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, and my parents were self-employed. They had a business. Originally, it was called the Brush and Palette, and it was down on 11th and Pearl Street. And when I was in high school, the last year that I was that I graduated, they were making the Pearl Street Mall. So at
Okay.
that time, my parents thought, well, okay, they're making the mall here, and it's going to be we're a little bit just off the mall, so maybe we should
I
go.
know what a mall is. It's not like an indoor mall.
No, it's a walking mall. The Pearl Street Mall in Boulder's, famous for its walking mall. So they decided they would move their business to another house. It was an old house. It was built in the 1800s, um, down on Pearl Street, but closer to the mountains west of Pearl, West Pearl, and was past where the mall was going to go. And so I was in college and da 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 da. They had this business opened up there. It was called the Montgomery House. They did custom picture framing there and had a gallery there.
Okay.
So when I moved back to Boulder in 1980, my mom wanted to retire. So they asked me if I would like to work there. And I said, well, sure, of course. And I needed a place to live too. And they had an apartment on the top story of this old house. It was called the Arnett Montgomery House. And it was 1880s, it was built. And so I lived upstairs and worked for my dad. And the story had gone when my folks had bought that building that it was haunted, that the people who lived on the top floor, they had a beaded curtain between the kitchen and the living room, and the beads would part, and they could hear those toilet flushing down on the main level where the business was, et cetera, et cetera. So when I moved there, I thought, okay, yeah, right, haunted, so what? But when I was cleaning there, I would, be cleaning and I'd put something down. I would leave it there in the bathroom or whatever, and I would go take a shower. I looked outside of the shower and I could see that there was something orange out there. And I'm like, I didn't leave anything orange out there. Open the shower, there's nothing orange. Close the door, nothing there. Things would be moved that I'd put my sponge here, it'd be gone somewhere else. So I'm like, that's, whatever. I must have forgotten where I put it.
Hmm.
And then at night, I would hear the toilet on the main level flushing. And since I worked there, I'd be like, okay, I'll go look. So I would go take my key to the business and go look. No, nothing, no one, nothing like that. So that was the ghost. And we decided as a family that it must be the man who built that house. His name was Montgomery. And when he and his family lived in the house, they had a son who at the age of 10 died of diphtheria, and his name was Walter. So we decided this must be Walter because the flushing of the toilet, little pranky things, nothing ever bad or that made you uncomfortable, just like, what the heck? What is this? Nothing.
Nothing with Walter, but
No, nothing with Walter. I just always thought, he's mischievous, he's flushing the toilet.
Well, he wouldn't in his lifetime if they built the house. They probably wouldn't even know what a toilet was.
Exactly
It was
right. So he liked
probably
to play.
yeah, yeah.
And that's kind of what I figured. He's even benign spirit in the house. Um, at that time, I was in my 20s, and the Pearl Street Mall was a place to hang out. And there was a club there called the Blue Note. And a good friend and I would go to the Blue Note every Friday and Saturday and go dancing and have a really good time. And this one night, we decided that she should come over to my house and I would give her a ride home instead of her walking home because it was really quite late. And so we walk a couple of blocks to where the house, Montgomery House is. And the whole block from the corner on only on my side of the street where I lived, was completely, the electricity was out. Just that one little block. I was like, oh, no big deal. And to get into the house, you had to walk up a flight of stairs, and then it leveled out, and another flight of stairs, and then there was a door that you opened to get into the whole building. On the one side was another door that would go to the business, and then another few little steps leading up to another door that was my apartment that I unlocked that went on up the stairs. So we go through the front door, got into the little foyer where the two doors were, and I just had this really odd, not good feeling. Like I felt something really was not right. And I put my key up in the door and I turned to my friend. I said, "Do you feel this?" And she said, "Yes, I do." And instead of like two intelligent young people leaving, we didn't. So we go in and I could just feel this. It was it was a miasma. It was heavy. The atmosphere was heavy. And I was scared to death. I grabbed my friend's arm and we're walking up the stairs. There are no lights on. And I said, I know there's some candles in my dining room. The kitchen was kind of in the middle of the apartment. And there was a door for the dining room and a door for a living room and etc. So I said, you have to hold on to my arm, though. I'm afraid if I reach in here, something's going to happen. And so she held on to my hand while I reached around the corner into the dining room and grabbed these candles. And I lit the candles in the kitchen, and I had a gas stove. So I said, why don't we make some cocoa or something like that? And still, like I say, like dummies, we're not leaving. We're feeling this horrible, the hair on my arms was standing up. I was so afraid.
This is the way all good horror movies start. The
Oh,
people
yeah.
that
It's like,
know
why
better,
didn't
the people that know better
right.
ignore the
Don't
sun.
go through that door.
Yes, yes.
I had two cats too, and not one of them was to be seen. So we got our cocoa and we went with the candles into the living room and we spent the whole entire night talking. And we talked about art and books and the things that we loved that made us happy. And just as dawn was starting to show up, it was like, oh, I finally feel okay. I was finally able to kind of relax. I was like, how are you doing? And she's like, yeah, I feel okay now. And so I was able to take her home. And we didn't really talk about it afterwards. Just like that was just kind of weird. That was a really weird experience. But I'd never been so terrified in my life, And again, why didn't we leave? I've asked myself that many a time. Why didn't we just go? But a couple of years after that, I was still there at that house and still have my cats. And the bedroom was in the front of the house, and it was kind of separate from the rest of the uh, bathroom, kitchen, living room, etc. And I was sleeping, and all of a sudden, I heard this sound, and it sounded like scuttle. There's something scuttling across the floor, and I was like, "What the heck is that?" And again, I felt that feeling of it was really still, like something was just waiting, and not a peep, not a sound anywhere. And it took all of my willpower to reach out of my bed and turn on the light. And I got the light on and I sat up in bed and there was nothing around me, but it was still that eerie silence, the sense of something watching and waiting for me to do something. And I was just like shaking in my boots. I didn't know what to do. My phone was next to the door. And I thought, I know if I really will it, that phone will fly to me and I'll be able to call for help. But I knew that I shouldn't do that because whatever this thing was watching and waiting for me to do something. So I sat there the whole entire night with the covers up and the light on. And my cats, I kept on calling my cats, kitties, come on, kitties. They would not come into that room. And I thought, wow, maybe I'm having some kind of a psychotic break with reality because this was so frightening. I'd never been that terrified in my life. And by the time dawn broke, I'm still sitting there with the covers up to my chin, like just shaking in my boots. I could not sleep in the dark for weeks. I had to sleep with the light on for weeks after that. And I thought, I just must be losing my mind. I just must be losing my mind. I thought, whatever the case is, I'll just have to give up on that. And I got up. I told my friend we'd had this shared experience about it. I said, something weird happened again. I said, it felt like the same thing, whatever this was. And I didn't feel like whatever this was a resident of the house because I called Walter. I said, Walter, if you're here, help. And there was no Walter, no little shenanigans from him. It was just whatever this thing was just like a miasma of ick. That's just the way it made me feel. I felt weighted down and heavy and oppressed, and it just was an awful feeling. And I was really glad that my friend had had that experience too. It wasn't just me. So I was, okay, I can't be completely crazy. And for some reason, this woman got my name and had heard that the Montgomery house was haunted. And she wanted to ask me about, if I knew about the hauntings in the Montgomery house. Her name is Roz Brown. And so I told her this story. And it was put in a book about haunted Boulder. And I talked to her later, and uh, there was in the garage of this building was an architect, and they didn't have a bathroom. There's no running water in the building in the garage. So they had a key to be able to come into the Montgomery house to use the bathroom at night when they were there or whatever. And this woman, Roz, told me that the guy who was the architect who worked in the building, the garage, had a similar story to mine, but he wasn't willing for his to be published because it just scared him too badly, and he just didn't want to really talk anymore about it. And I get that. I've had nothing to scare me like that event did. And in my mind, I feel like whatever it was transient. It came in occasionally to this building because it was old, and it also was still, a haunted house too. But man, that thing, whatever it is, it wasn't a ghost. It was something completely other
It
than that.
was the big thing is that the cats
No
wouldn't
cats.
would not come around. Now let me ask you this. You just said, okay, was the architects, were they the ones flushing the toilet at night?
No, no, no.
No. Okay, okay,
No,
okay. I'm
no.
like maybe
Uh-uh.
this guy's drawing something. And when you first, and the funny thing is when you first started telling the story, is my ex-wife and I owned a framing business
Oh, you're kidding.
in an old Victorian house in the town here where we live outside of that was haunted.
Oh, wow, that's wild.
So I'm like, okay, I can totally like picture this
Right.
the stuff going on. But
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like I
so,
said, I had no worries about Walter. I mean,
mhm.
I never saw Walter, but I saw the result of him being there. Like I say, something out the shower door wouldn't be there when I would close it again. Things moved when, I was trying to find something and it wouldn't be where I put it, things like that. That's a child being mischievous. And I had no worries about Walter.
And so when this presence that you felt was not there, did Walter come back out and do stuff again?
Yeah, Walter would flush the toilet. After I lived there for 8 years, and this entity, like I said, only came the two times while I was there. But I would hear the toilet occasionally in the middle of the night flushing. And it's a three-story building, the top story, the middle story, and the basement. And on the main floor was where the toilet would flush. And that wasn't the one that the architect used. They used the one in the
Ah,
base.
okay,
So
okay. Holy smokes.
Walter
Well,
was there before the architect too. So
well, I'm glad that you survived that. And thank
yes,
you thank you for jumping on and
of
sharing it.
course.
I'm
Yeah,
sh- I'm
never
sure
want another experience like that again, believe
I
me.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. And I'm curious, listeners, if they have experienced the same sort, because
Yeah.
I've heard tons of stories about the heaviness,
Yeah.
like if people are in bed and they feel like can't get up, or there's something not physically pushing on them, but it feels like there's just weight on them.
Yeah.
And that has to be a frightening feeling for sure.
Yeah, it is because it's, something you can't see, and you have a feeling that if you try to engage with it, that would be the exact wrong thing to do.
That's what it
So
wants. That's what it
that's what
wants.
it wants, is for you to, like I said, I knew that phone would fly into my hands if I willed it to be so, but that would be the wrong thing to do. Be like crossing a line
Oh,
somehow.
jeez. Well,
Yeah.
Briggs, thank you so much for jumping on
Sure.
here.
You bet.
Kevin, are you still there? Are you lurking in the back?
I'm lurking.
Well, Kevin, I want to thank you for reaching out. Thank you for coming on and sharing your experiences with us. And I mean, I can't imagine having that happen and then trying to find answers. But thankfully, you got a little smarter as you got older and got out of places when the going got a little hairy.
Yeah. But you know what? I'm still looking for answers.
Oh, jeez. We'll finish the album first, and
We're
then
working on it.
and
Yeah.
and then go. Yes. So I'll put a link up in our description for people to go find your music on.
Absolutely. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah. We'll let people go check out your stuff, and because I saw your website and some you got some stuff up on Spotify, so we'll put some links up there so people can go check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
Yeah. Just recently had my rock album that had sold tens of thousands of units out of the trunks of our cars, and I've just now got that back up. I've got it up for the first time streaming, so I'd like to give you that link as well, please.
well, you selling one album out of the back of your car is more money than you'll make streaming, no matter how much.
I know, but it's not about that anymore, man. It's about leaving a legacy.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Send me whatever links and we'll put them up for you, man.
You bet. And thanks for having us,
Thank you.
Shane.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the From the Shadows podcast. Until next time, never shy away from the darkness or what may be lurking in the shadows. We are out.
God only knows what's hiding